as we sit here on June 7th, 6-7, which is a bigger concern for the upcoming Philadelphia Eagles season for John McMullen? The quarterback or the cornerbacks? Which to you do you think is a bigger concern for this upcoming year? John McMullen. How are you, JM?
Doing well, Jody. Excited to be back. Little Birds 365. It's off season for the Eagles now. Their last OTA Friday. Never off season for us.
That's right. We're here with you each and every single day, 8 to 10 Eastern. We appreciate your jumping aboard. You jumped out onto the grass on Friday. How'd that go? When you and I last talked, you were getting in the car, exiting stage right, going down to the link. How'd your quality grass time go?
Well, yeah, the best part was getting into Lincoln Financial Field. Obviously, we were there last year, but a little bit more of a buoyant environment, for lack of a better term, because people realize fans are going to be back, and there's a little bit more excitement I sense this year. Obviously, we were all locked up last year in the offseason, but nonetheless, you know, Jeffrey Lurie was out there, Howie Roseman, Catherine Raish, everybody's smiling. Nick Sirianni's doing all the competitive tetherball things, backpedal races, you name it. It's like a carnival, Jody. Carnival.
You need to give the Eagle fans out there some details on these tetherball competition. I don't even know what you would call them other than competitions. Tests that he put his players through, certainly in a practice. And you could see, we're assuming he did them in other ones as well. He really is holding strong to this competition is everything stance, isn't Nick Sirianni?
Yeah, by the way, and I continue to say this, Jody, when is this guy going to win something? On Friday,
you got beat again?
You, by your boy, Greg Ward, a three-point shooting contest. He loses to Greg Ward. He keeps us waiting because he's losing a three-point contest to Greg Ward. Now, I joke, but look, he's creating, and I give him credit. Everybody does seem enthused. Everybody does seem excited to be out there. And, you know, that's part of a head coach's job in this league is managing personalities, sure, getting everybody on the same page, getting everybody in a positive framework, positive mindset. So I give all of that credit. I give him credit for all of that. We'll see how it works out. You know how this works, Jody. I mean, everything's great, but if you start losing, then people start to go, what is this nonsense? You know, we got to win football games. On the other hand, if you start winning, you're a genius. You're an absolute genius for keeping everybody on the same page, for keeping everybody positive, for keeping everybody entertained, because football practice is boring. I say it all the time. It's boring. It's incredibly boring. So you're out there with the tetherball contraption, Devontae Smith, Travis Fulgham. And Devontae Smith, by the way, he's another species than any other wide receiver the Eagles have. Deshaun Jackson was a lot like that as well, but he was never on the field. As he got older and got injured all the time, he's just so much more talented than any other receiver they have. So, number one, that's a huge positive. And the thing I keep getting with him is, yeah, the legs are incredibly skinny. I mean, it makes you worry for his well-being. I say it all the time, but he's not small. He's incredibly long. He's like a praying mantis out there, just snatching the football. And everybody can go to the JAKIB Media YouTube page. I put up some practice videos, and you can see Travis and Devontae having their tetherball competition. You can see Devontae making it harder for himself. By the way, he's throwing the football over his head, so it snaps back over his head. Meanwhile, Travis Fulgham's just throwing it straight so it comes into his chest. You know, the guy knows he's better than everybody else, so he's making it more difficult for himself. So there's a lot of positives, but boy, I got to tell you, Jody, and I'm talking about Nick Sirianni, this is either going to be the biggest home run in the world or the biggest you-know-what in the world. Because if this guy fails, You're going to hear all that stuff. High school nonsense, blah, blah. What is this? These are professional. You're going to hear all that stuff. This guy's got to win, and he's got to win pretty early.
Well, how early is early?
I think pretty early. Or he's going to start taking hits. You know, one of the things, he's in the media, and he's a good question, great question, phenomenal question guy. And then he never answers the question. So he's trying to make people feel good. You can see, and by the way, I've always argued this. I always bring up Joe Torre, but you got to do it in a more subtle fashion. You got to be more subtle about it, and people will give you the benefit of the doubt when they know you're blowing smoke up there. You know what? It's too obvious. It's too over the top. Now, again, it all comes down to wins and losses. If he wins, he could do whatever he wants. You know, Bill Belichick is the biggest curmudgeon in the history of the world. So what?
Yeah.
He's got all the rings to back it up. Everything comes down to winning or losing. I got to tell you, though, it hit me on Friday. I'm like, this is too much. This is too much if this guy loses. This is like, that's why I said it's like going to the fucking carnival. And I can curse on this show. It's like going to the carnival. I'm going to put 50 cents down to go on the tetherball machine. And
all right. Let me answer some questions. First things first. Did you get a fist bump?
No. Different.
Well, he's not blowing it up your butt. Apparently, others maybe, but not John McMullen's.
No, different type of environment because we're at Lincoln Financial Field. He couldn't give anybody a fist bump.
So nobody got fist bumps.
No, nobody got fist bumps.
Right,
we would have got fist bumps if we were at the NovaCare complex.
Gotcha. All right. You say he's got to win early. Xander and I, the fine producer of this program, were talking before you got punched up this morning, and Xander pointed out that he just double-checked the odds to win the Super Bowl this year. There are only 4 teams in the NFL at longer odds to win the Super Bowl as of right now than the Philadelphia Eagles. And part of that could be because they've got an unknown, overly enthusiastic, high schoolish new head coach. But a good part of that is because of the roster that they're going to come into this season with. And that does not equate to, quote unquote, winning early. As far as I'm concerned, does he get no grace period whatsoever? Like, if they're 0-3, oh my God, Nick Sirianni is a high school coach. How the hell is he in charge of the Philadelphia Eagles?
It's interesting, Jody.
When does that probationary period end? Before the first month of the season is over?
If you're 0-4, yeah. You know, I was thinking about that. Worst case scenario is like 0-6, 0-7. Then the wheels are off. That's a good number, 0-3. When does it start? You know, I think he's got to win early. I think he's got to get one early. Might be Atlanta. Might be no Julio Jones.
Right. Again, hypothetical. Beats Atlanta, but then loses 4 straight. Dead in the water at 1-4?
It's still bad, but not dead in the water. I will say, you know, one of the positives for Nick is I think he's going to overachieve because the expectations are so low. So I think personally, I think he's going to overachieve. I had this team at 8 wins. I think you had him at 8 wins.
Yep.
That's better than Vegas. That's what I'm talking about. When I say win, I'm not saying win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying win the NFC East even. Certainly not being a Super Bowl contender. They're not going to be a Super Bowl contender. I'm saying you have to overachieve. You have to do better than is expected. And that's good because not much is expected. And the reason I would take a little issue with you. You said the roster is the reason for the expectations. I disagree. The reason for the low expectations is the head coach and the quarterback.
Really?
And that's it.
Well, the quarterback is part of the roster, is he not?
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying is the rest of the roster is the reason I think they're going to overachieve because I think this is a really good offensive line, a really good defensive line. And that's why I think they're going to be better than people expect. All people outside Philadelphia are looking at the head coach and they're seeing the nutty stuff and the stuff we just talked about. And they're looking at the quarterback who's inexperienced and hasn't proven anything. And that's how people are when they look at this league. They expect bad play from young quarterbacks.
All right, here's one that I'm pretty sure we're going to have a Mac disagreement. Which, as we sit here, what's today's date? The 10th? 11th? What the hell?
No, you're going way ahead. June
it's only the
7th.
7th. Okay,
June
damn.
7th.
I thought the year was flying right by. You're trying to get the opening week for the
Trying
Eagles
to get there.
quicker than I should. As we sit here on June 7th, 6-7, which is a bigger concern for the upcoming Philadelphia Eagles season for John McMullen? The quarterback or the cornerbacks? Which to you do you think is a bigger concern for this upcoming year?
That's a good question. I would say because of the only reason I even hesitate is because of Darius Slay. Darius Slay is a good player, and Jonathan Gannon is supposed to be sort of a cornerback type of guy. And he reclamated Xavier Rhodes, he reclamated TJ Carey. So he's supposed to be somebody who can take lesser talent and at least make them competent. Because of the quarterback position and its importance, I would be more concerned about the quarterback.
Yeah, that's what I figured. My worry is more cornerback. Right now, Zach McPherson, your QB, your CB2.
Yeah, I'm not happy with it.
A fourth-round pick who we got no idea can even play cornerback in the National Football League. How'd he do a tether ball, by the way? Maybe that will tell us whether he can be
He was at the backpedaling tent, Jody.
How does backpedaling go?
Yeah. Well, he's not the cornerback two. He's a rookie. The cornerback two right now is Avonte Maddox. I'm not saying it's good, but, it's a veteran player.
I think I read this somewhere. You can confirm or deny. When they put their quote-unquote teams out there, and they did very little of it, it was Avonte Maddox in the slot.
Yeah.
And Michael Jacquet outside as a CB2 as of right now. So I don't know that Avonte Maddox is CB2 if they
what they
probably
were doing,
rightfully thinking it, he's better in the slot.
He is better. What they were doing, though, is in base defense, which is not base anymore. It's sub package. But when they're in a 4-3, Slay and Maddox are the corners. When they go to nickel, Maddox kicks inside, Jacquet comes in. So the two corners.
Which is how much, and you can either quote numbers from last year or project for me. How often are they in nickel? 65% of the time?
About 65, yeah.
The base package is now 35%?
If that. My only point is Avonte's the cornerback too, because he's the one on the field that's going to be on the field 100% of the time.
That's true too.
That's my only point with that. So they'll start him outside, they'll kick him inside, and sub package is no longer sub package. That's one of my pet peeves. Nickel should be base, 4-3 should be the sub package. But nonetheless, you get my point. One guy's going to be on the field all the time, the other guy isn't. Yeah, that stinks. I still say today, if you were going to ask me who's going to be the second outside corner or that third corner, if you're going to move Avonte Maddox inside, I think he's still not on the roster. I think I think that's still to come.
All right, but along those lines, one of the individuals who could have been considered as a possible CB2 for this team decided to join the Minnesota Vikings over the weekend. Former Chief Rashad Breeland, Super Bowl champion cornerback, inked a free agent deal with the Vikings. The best I can get on, maybe you've got better than me, details on the contract are up to $4 million, which, again, you don't really know what the exact numbers are. The deal that the Eagles did with Ryan Kerrigan was up to $3.5 million, but we found out the base was only $1 million and change with incentives, probably achievable incentive, but incentive just the same, so it doesn't count against the cap just yet. Breeland signed what seemed to me to be a reasonable deal. The Eagles, I don't know how close they weren't signing him, but they didn't sign him. Another legitimate starting cornerback comes off the board this weekend. You just mentioned you believe CB2 is not in Eagles camp yet. Well, when's he getting here, J-Mac? When is Howie Roseman going to make that happen?
It could be August, as we said. He continues to make that Ronald Darby comparison, which they picked up him in August. But Look, Jody, it's a bad position outside of Darius Slay. We all know it. They know it. They're going to talk up the players that are here because what good is throwing them under the bus? Breland's an interesting guy because, look, he started on a really good football team. Won a Super Bowl, went back to another Super Bowl. For whatever reason, I never heard his name mentioned with the Eagles. It's always about evaluation. For whatever reason, they didn't seem to be interested in the player. I don't get it. I think the name that's out there that most people focus on is Steven Nelson.
Steven Nelson,
yeah.
I'm getting tired of saying Steven Nelson here on Birds 365. It's a daily name toss, and Steven Nelson. How about Steven Nelson? Yeah. Maybe Steven Nelson. Could it be Steven Nelson? How many days have we found out that the Eagles haven't signed Steven Nelson?
I hope they're not putting all their eggs in one basket. To me, they should have thought about Breland. He's better than what they have at the bare minimum. And we just talked about Jonathan Gannon. If you're expecting Jonathan Gannon to turn Mike Jacquet or Zach McPherson into more than what they seem like, well, then he should be able to do some things with a guy who's, played deep in the playoffs and had success with the Kansas. He played well, by the way. Obviously, there's athleticism concerns. There's a reason he's still on the market. He's not the most talented guy in the world. But he's proven he can play in a successful defense, and he's proven he can produce in a successful defense. I don't know why they weren't interested, to be honest. But now he's not an option.
He is no longer an option. He's going to be in purple this upcoming year. All right, one more point, and then we'll get ready to get our first guest. Your bud, Mike Gill from 97.3 down the shore. You've done many a spot on his show, so he's going to pay back the favor, do a spot on our show. One other thing that specifically hit home for me from Friday, the Nick Sirianni's availability, when asked about padded practices, when they actually start practicing. These aren't true practices, JM. These are gatherings. These are competitions. It hasn't been all about football, mano-a-mano, players versus players. Nick Sirianni was asked about padded practices once they actually do get padded practice in, and he said, I think I'm going to go right up to the CBA limit because there are restrictions on how often you can be in pads with the relationship between the players and the teams now. There's a stopwatch for every minute that they spend in pads during practice prior to the start of the year and then when the year is ongoing. And the coach said, well, that's how you play football, right, in pads? And that, yes, we are going to use as much time as we can for padded practices. While he may be fun during the summer and he may be all about keeping it light and keeping it lively and keeping his players happy, he kind of hinted at the fact that, when it's time to work, we're going to work. When it's time to get physical, we're going to get physical. When it's time to hit, we're going to hit. That's exactly what this Eagle fan wants to hear, at least.
Yeah, I wouldn't get too hyped about that. That's a phenomenal question, though, Jody. That's a phenomenal. I'm doing Nick Sirianni. Look, they're going to be in pads. They're going to thud. They're not going to go down to the ground very much. I mean, teams just don't do that anymore. So if you're looking for live periods, Doug Peterson maybe did 2 a summer when they were out there, sometimes 3. That was astronomical when you compared it to around to the rest of the league. And obviously he learned from Andy Reid, so you can understand. I mean, that's not Nick Sirianni. That's not. I mean, is it going to be better than Chip Kelly? Yeah, probably. Is it going to be as physical as Doug Peterson? Probably not. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. And if you're looking for live periods at practice, if you get 1 or 2, I'd be surprised. There'll be some thuds.
You're raining on my parade. He said he's going to be in pads as much as he possibly can.
Well, being in pads and having live periods or something. Chip Kelly had guys in pads. You want guys in pads just to get them used. We're talking about live periods. We're talking about hitting. That doesn't exist in the NFL anymore. Again, Doug Peterson did 2 or 3 an entire summer of live periods, and they were really short, by the way. Maybe goal line for a couple minutes, maybe coming off the goal line for a couple minutes, and that was it. Now, will they thud occasionally where you don't wrap up, you don't take people to the ground? That's what Chip Kelly did on occasion. There'll be more in that direction.
I'm hoping that it's at least what Doug Peterson did. You told me you don't even think it's going to be as much as what Doug Peterson did. I'm hoping for at least that. And you're right. It's comparison to everyone else in the league. You can't compare it to what it used to be. I could trot out Dick Vermeil in 2-a-days, and we know that's never happening again in the National Football League. So you have to keep it in the context of comparing to every other team in the NFL. There are 31 other teams, Coach Sirianni. You want to be the most physical. You're hearing it from your buddy, the Mac Man. And you don't even have to tell me. That's an outstanding question.
Phenomenal question, Joe.
Don't need any smoke blowing up this guy's rear end. All right, we'll blow smoke up our first guest when he comes on with us because he was good enough to get up and hop aboard with us early on. It is Mike Gill from 97.3 ESPN Radio down the shore. He's going to jump aboard next here on Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.